a sea of strange energies that lies beneath the materium. It allows us to travel quickly from one system to another, but it is not our ally. When we travel through it, we are purity in a maelstrom of dark intent, like a goldfish invading a backwater pond. Yet its usefulness cannot be denied. It allowed us to conquer the galaxy, twice. Today we will discover the many things it can do to us if we don't pay attention. But let us start with a story, the story of a goldfish that wasn't paying attention. But first, a short explanation as to what the warp actually is. The warp, sometimes also referred to as the Sea of Souls, is another dimension alongside real space that consists of sheer turbulent cosmic energies. It is in constant flow, with the direction of flow ever-changing and unpredictable. This is what allows ships to travel faster through the warp than they would be capable of in real space. A ship is guided by a navigator, a special strand of human that possesses a third eye, one that can see directly into the warp without going mad. The warp is where the souls of sentient beings go when they die. Every emotion, action, dream, or thought feeds the warp and reflects it back, creating its own reality. As time went on, these imprints on the warp would begin to pile up and coalesce into beings. All of such beings are predatory and dangerous to the highest degree. Some will possess you, take your body, and contort it in various ways, snapping bones and pulling tendons, tearing skin, or dissolving entirely. Others will simply drive you insane. And yet others will leave behind only empty husks and the screaming shadow of their victim. Finding yourself in the warp without Gellar fields, the devices used to protect the inhabitants aboard a starship, is one of the darkest fates imaginable. As for our goldfish... M31, the Istvan system after the Jobsite massacre, at the onset of the Horus Heresy. Primar Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard is attempting to escape from amidst the traitor fleet above Istvan 5. He guides the now flagship, the Avenger, through real space and through the enemy ships, making use of reflex shields, a rarely used type of stealth technology that allows the user to flip void shields inside out. Instead of absorbing things coming in from outside, it instead absorbs anything that the starship itself emits, anything that might give away its location, such as thruster fire. Corax guides the Avenger towards the Mandeville point, a point from which he can safely translate into the warp without interference from nearby celestial bodies. But he has his mind set on vengeance. He is not about to let the 75,000 dead Raven Guard Marines go unpunished without even an attempt at striking back. They were his sons, and they were all murdered by his brothers. The Avenger slowly weaves its way out of the net the traitors attempted to set up, moving forwards, gliding its way to a suitable location to execute Corax's idea. They made ready for their warp jump. They slid silently through the void, closer and closer, to a word-bearer's vessel. When Corax finally decided they were close enough, he commanded his ship to make the jump into the warp, without even firing a single shell at the word-bearers. As the Avenger tore a hole in reality and plunged into the warp, the word-bearer ship, too close to the Avenger, was pulled in with her, into the immaterium. The word-bearers did not get any warning. Their Gellar field generators were cold. The unaware goldfish was swallowed whole and dragged down into the depths of the immaterium. Needless to say, they were never seen or heard from again. Humanity has been capable of traversing the warp since the invention of the warp drive. This device is what allows us to tear a hole into reality and into the warp. Along with the warp drive, they discovered Gellar fields and how to harness them in Gellar field generators. These Gellar fields are the key to warp travel. The generators conjure a field which envelops the entire ship and keeps its inhabitants safe from the demons and denizens of the warp, until the ship tears back out of the warp at its destination. One is useless without the other. This is why Gellar field generators and warp drives are made together, as a single unit. Most warp drives and Gellar field generators lie at the very core of their ship and will likely never be replaced until the destruction of the ship entirely. Gellar fields are necessary since humans and other psychically potent races have a noticeable psychic signature once they enter the warp, like a bright flare shot into the pitch-black void. Their souls are visible to all demons and the like from metaphorical miles away, and you do not want them to be able to get to you. Races like the Tau, who have a very small psychic signature, can traverse the warp without Gellar fields, since their souls are barely visible, more like a matchstick or firefly. Notice also how Tau don't have psychers. All races with a more potent psychic signature like Eldar and humans were forced to find other solutions. After the invention of the warp drive and Gellar field generators, humanity also went on to create navigators sometime during M22. Keep in mind this was still during the dark age of technology, humanity's zenith when it comes to technology and innovation. Navigators are like guides. Their third eye can peer straight into the warp and discern what path is the safest and fastest. They can then steer the ship along this path through the currents of the warp to the ship's destination. The navigator gene, the third eye, is inherited. They all come from the same families, and all these families combined are called the navis nobilitae. They generally reside on Terra, but not on a ship. In the case of a momentary Gellar field collapse during warp transit, whether you survive or not will largely depend on how long the generators remain non-functional. There have been accounts from Astartes, which are about as trustworthy as sources get, that claim they have experienced such a thing. I have gathered from these sources what I could and compiled a likely scenario of what it would be like if the generators experience a temporary failure. If this happens, and pray that it never will, you will immediately hear voices and screams emanating from all around you. Then things will start to change. An ordinary piece of wall section might turn into flesh, or suddenly become infested with maggots. Many systems on the ship will suddenly fail, as well as sudden fires and explosions all over the ship. If the blink lasts longer than that, the crew will start to get attacked by invisible forces. Some will start to scream or throw up black liquid. Others will look down at their abdomen, horrified to see two horns seemingly attempting to make their way out. I don't believe luck is even applicable anymore, but if you are one of the lucky ones who survives until now, till the Gellar fields come back online, well then, your ship is now infested with demons and strange warp anomalies, and you are still within the warp, with faulty Gellar field generators. If you do make it back to real space and to a friendly port, your whole ship will either have to be purged entirely or destroyed, and since you were on the ship when it was corrupted, you will likely be destroyed along with it. There are rumors of Astartes surviving longer periods of time within the warp and without Gellar fields. Many of these rumors are difficult to explain or to find evidence for. However, the Astartes were created by the Emperor himself. Who knows just what they are capable of doing. If the Gellar fields never turn back on, the whole ship will be hunted to extinction, each person on board meaning an end you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. The ship is now dead, silent. It might occasionally drift into real space thanks to the constantly changing currents of the warp, only to drift back after some time. Some of these dead ships merge and meld with each other, and create what is known as a space hulk. These space hulks can consist of dozens of ships, all jumbled into one. It becomes impossible to tell where one ends and another begins. The biggest of them can be so enormous they even retain an atmosphere around them. If you encounter one of these space hulks, stay away. They can drift back into the warp at any time, an hour, a day, or a century from now, and they're often inhabited by orcs or gene stealers. This is what happened during the Socorus tragedy, an undertaking by the Blood Angel chapter, and a tale we will tell another time. The story I can tell is the tale of a space hulk called the Broken Back, a space hulk consisting of at least 16 vessels. It is currently inhabited by the Soldringers chapter, an Imperial Fist successor that was excommunicated after having an unfortunate encounter with the Mechanicus. How precisely they know when it will drift back into the warp is unknown. It is now their hiding place, base of operations, and fortress monastery. When the Imperium finds a previously unknown space hulk, its military forces are obligated to search them thoroughly, since they often harbor ancient tech, sometimes all the way from the dark age of technology. Such tech is incredibly valuable to the Imperium, although wherever possible this is a task better left to the honored terminators of an Astartes chapter's first company. If it is deemed that the scouring of the space hulk is not worth the resources that would go into such an endeavor, the space hulk may also be destroyed through bombardment. Whatever the circumstances, these ships are now dead and unfit for humans. They drift silently through the void. The reactor, cold, forever. Come back next week for another dark tale of the Imperium of Man, and let me know what you thought of this one.